Hi, my name is Ryan. Thank you for coming to my channel and thank you for watching this episode 12 of my first backpacking trip to Europe. In the last episode, I explained how I was at a crisis in my journey, didn't know if I wanted to go home, throw in the towel, or continue. And then I had some inspiration along a long hike and a very influential conversation with a person I had met in Samaria Gorge that sort of confirmed my desire to persist on my trip, even though I was alone and even though I was at very low spirits at that time. I decided to go to Egypt. I took this long ferry from Crete, from Hania, the port town, where I bought a ticket, and I had to wait the entire day for the ferry. So it was a very long day. I remember that day like it was yesterday. It was very boring. Then I took that ferry overnight to Athens, and I didn't sleep much on that ferry. And then I got to Athens airport early in the morning and bought a ticket to Cairo. But the plane wasn't going to leave until nighttime, so I spent another entire boring day. But this time, I bought The Lord of the Rings, the trilogy. So I picked up the book and I had something to keep me busy. And I ended up just glued to this book. Get the flight from Athens airport to Cairo. I don't remember how much it cost me, but it wasn't a lot of money. And I arrive in Cairo airport at a little after midnight. Now, I hadn't slept much, so I wanted to find a hostel. So I get my bags, I go through customs, I exchange some money, and at that time there was 6 Egyptian pounds to $1. And as soon as I leave to enter the city, right at that exit place, that arrival section in Cairo airport, there were just numerous agents for hotels and tours clamoring, trying to get my attention, and as well as any other non-Egyptian that was coming through very aggressively. Sometimes I would see this at some Greek ports, people, or even at Greek restaurants, a lot of aggressive salesmanship, like almost like trying to pull you in to their restaurant. And now they're trying to pull me along to sign up for their hotel or their tour or something like that. I didn't want to do that. I mentioned I wanted to be a real backpacker, this image in my head. So I just wanted to find a hostel. So I found a taxi driver that he seemed like he wasn't trying to sell me anything. And I said, center city, get into Cairo. So he takes me in and I said, hostel? Do you know hostel? He says, hostel, I know hostel. So he takes me to a hostel. It's not actually a hostel. It was called the Maggie Hotel. I said, are you sure this is a hostel? Yes, hostel. Turns out he was working for sometimes taxi drivers get paid by establishments to drop off dumb tourists at their doorstep. So this was one of those situations. I get inside the Maggie Hotel. I don't have the best feeling about this place because I didn't want to stay at any place with the name of hotel. I wanted a hostel. But the other options were to wander around this area of Cairo at such a late hour. And it was not a very nice area, not a very safe. Well, it might have been very safe, but didn't seem very inviting. I was tired, or jump into another taxi and hope they were more honest. But without knowing the address of a hostel or even the name of a hostel, so I'm a big advocator of just plunging into your adventure without a lot of foreknowledge or research. I think sometimes you get the most exciting things, but sometimes you come up to situations like this. But as you'll see hopefully from the end of this episode, it wasn't so bad as I thought. Ended up in the Maggie Hotel, and some young guys who sort of have the predatory feeling of hungry coyotes seat me into a room and tell me their master will be with me soon. This guy comes in as I'm sitting on the ground. There's just all of these really old rugs, like really old tapestries. It's very, very interesting, sort of bohemian. Not like bohemian, but maybe just I don't know how to describe it. A lot of old rugs all around, only sitting on the ground, sort of dark. It's like close to 1 a.m. And the boss comes in, and he's got a lazy eye. Not that there's anything wrong with that. He's got a Weasley figure. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And he just sits across this table and just eyeing me. And he's just, yes. Oh, yeah, you, ba. He's trying to sell me on a tour called Amigo Tours. Now, I would later find out there was a warning in Lonely Planet about Amigo Tours at that time. Be careful of Amigo Tours. I didn't know that at this time. He's trying to sell me on this tour. And I don't want a tour. I want to be Aragorn, Gandalf, Frodo. They wouldn't take a tour. They would follow their mission. They would follow their destiny. So I didn't want a tour. And I tried to talk him out of trying to sell me a tour, but he just kept coming round and round, and he's got his hungry coyote followers all around me. And I'm thinking, and it's getting later and later, and I'm getting tired, more and more tired. I probably, using some very good psychological techniques to sort of weaken my will. If you're going to interrogate someone or try to sell them on something, you want to catch them when they're at their weakest. And me, being sleep deprived, it's very late, I have nowhere to go, so there's that little apprehension, like I'm just walking out the door, where am I going to go? My will weakened. He told me the price of a night at the Maggie Hotel versus a tour, which would be 2 weeks, including hotel accommodation in various towns, some travel expenses, like a car ride to Alexandria, entrance to museums. I mean, he was telling me about this 2-week tour that I can sign up for like $100 or $100 and something dollars. It was pretty cheap. And I agreed to it. And in this very dodgy circumstance, And I regretted that. I was ashamed of that for a while. But in the end, I was actually quite happy. So I won't go into all the details, but this tour, I had like a private tour guide showing me around Cairo, introducing me to family members. They were like friends. We gave each other nicknames. Like there was this tour guide named Crazy, and he called me Hummus. And he walked around with me, showed me so many things. I of course had my own free time, could do a lot of what I wanted. Had another tour guide, took me to the Egyptian Museum and explained a lot of the history. Tour, and then I met a couple other people who were on this tour that became very close friends, even now on my Facebook. One of them, Dell and Michael. Dell was an English guy who worked in the London Underground. Michael was an Irishman living in London. He was friends with Dell, who was from Ireland, had horses and whatnot. Anyways, became very close friends with them. Met other people. We did a felucca, is what they called it. Sort of like a sailing vessel down the Nile for 2 nights and 3 days with Captain Cool. And I remember running into Captain Cool while he was squatting and handling his business in the middle of a field, not using toilet paper, because I shouldn't deprecate. Probably a lot of people feel that our use of toilet paper in the West is really dirty, but people in that area, heavily Islamic culture, use water. So he just had a bucket of water when I caught him in the field. That was a weird experience. Anyways, met this guy Jocelyn, a French-Canadian guy, real tall guy, very interesting guy. Met this Finnish young man who was he had a better command of the English language than I did, and I'm a native speaker. He was a very interesting guy. Met a lot of cool people through this tour. Got to see Alexandria, go into some castles, went to Karnak, Luxor. Got to go to a lot of places. It was actually, in the end, I don't know how I would have gone to a lot of these places without Amigo Tours. So it is what it is. I still did feel slightly ashamed about signing up for a tour, because it was sort of against my backpacker ethics. Although now, almost 20 years later, it wasn't so bad. I'm happy that it happened how it did. I remember going down on a second-class train. I think I was going to I was going from like Cairo to the south, and I remember looking at the Nile and seeing all of these very poor rural families living on the Nile. I remember seeing very poor families traveling in Mexico with my family, like people living in very small shanties and shanties made of cardboard. But the poverty that I saw in the Nile was on another level. People were living like just in mud houses right on the banks of the river, using the river water for their drinking water, for their cleaning, for their bathing. It was another world. And some of the people who were getting onto the train who didn't necessarily have tickets, or they didn't have seats, so they're just standing in the aisle sometimes, were fascinating. The clothes they were wearing, almost like desert nomads. Some of their, I mean, some of them looked like they just came out of the Bible. Some of the how they were dressed. And I remember this one very tall, dark-skinned Egyptian man from the country who had like a shepherd's outfit, but some ornate religious jewelry. I remember he was barefoot and his feet were fantastic. Well, fantastic in an impressive way, because they were so tough and so large and they looked so strong. I like to go barefoot a lot, and I pride myself that I can run barefoot in the hills. But this guy's feet were tough from a lifelong of going barefoot in tough wilderness. The food was good, for the most part. I mean, you don't go to Egypt just for the food, but just the simple food. Their local dish, I forget the name of it, but I think it was made from couscous, mixed with vegetables and sauce. It was very nice, and it would cost 1 Egyptian or 1.5 Egyptian or 2 Egyptian pounds. So anywhere from 15 to 30 US cents, you can get like a nice meal, almost like a rice bowl would be our equivalent. I would drink the sugarcane water. I should say, though, I did have some stomach problems during some of this trip, and so I don't know exactly if it was from the food or from the water. So yeah, the food was great, but I got sick. Maybe from the beverages. Difficult to find alcohol. There are some special liquor shops, but as you probably know, the Islamic faith is not very condoning of imbibing of intoxicants, at least alcohol, and at least in Egypt. Egypt was felt very safe. I would wander around Cairo at 4 a.m. by myself. I remember I was in Ramses Square, which is like a downtown square, and the traffic is insane. I mean, I have been to places with bad traffic. Lived in China for years. You know, I've seen bad drivers. But Cairo, largest city in Africa at the time, took the cake, because bad drivers in America, bad drivers even in China, they still stay on the right side of the road for the most part. They still somewhat listen and obey the traffic signals. Cairo, there were lanes, there were lights at times. No one cared. So it was very common to be driving on the wrong side of the road. It was very common to not be driving straight, but diagonal through other people who were diagonaling. So it was just a crisscrossing mess. No one cared about anything traffic related. So, I mean, I wrote down in my journal that it would get my heart pumping just to take a drive through Cairo, because just the honking and the crisscrossing and cutting very close to other cars, the stress of it. I mean, there is nothing that does it justice that I have ever seen in all of my travels. And I remember at one hotel, there was a cute receptionist in the lobby, and I didn't really have a lot of opportunities for romance in Egypt, but she was the only cute Egyptian girl I remember talking to, and we had a nice kind of chemistry and banter for the most part. And I remember asking her name, and I said, "What's your name?" And she's like, "Pussy." And I said, what? And she said, pussy. And I said, bussy? You mean bussy? She said, no, pussy. And I was like, oh, nice to meet you, pussy. It was the only person I've ever met in the world named Pussy. I don't know if that's an Egyptian name or a nickname, or if my ears still deceive me, but that was unusual. Probably one of the highlights, a couple highlights that I'll talk about before I end this. Oh, I can't miss talking about the Great Pyramids. So I went to the Great Pyramids at Giza. That was awesome. Cheops, Macarenes, and Chevron, I think, are the three main pyramids that are the most famous. So I got to ride camels, a camel around the pyramids. I got to go inside one of the pyramids. I think it might have been Chevron that I went inside, but don't quote me. And I don't even know if you can go in the pyramids anymore. So sometimes when you choose a place to travel to a place that you really want to go to earlier than later. So for example, like Machu Picchu, I hear that there's a lot more control about getting into Machu Picchu than there used to be. My brother went there recently. I forget the details. But, we sort of lose access to certain cultural places as it gets more crowded, as the tourist industry changes and whatnot. So I was able to go inside the pyramids, got to see the Sphinx, got to see King Tut's chamber, King Tut's sarcophagus in the Egyptian Museum, which was gorgeous. It was cool going inside the pyramids, cool seeing the Sphinx, cool being in the desert. Cairo was awesome. I remember going to, I think it was the largest Islamic shrine in Cairo, and I think it was up on a hill, and it had a beautiful view. I really did like Cairo. I do have to say, even with the crazy traffic, I just liked it. It had this seediness to it, but this history mixed in. It had the modern seediness with the old ancient history, because once you were up pretty high and you looked at the city, you could see the downtown, the tall buildings, the sky rises, the slums, but you could see the pyramids right there transposed against the modern city. Constructions that have been built in the last several decades and constructions that were built thousands of years ago. And I just like the feeling of being in Cairo, because I think one of the reasons a lot of us travel, I can't speak for you, but is to leave whatever life that we are used to. There's something very freeing about going to another country. There's something there's a school bus just outside right now, dropping some kids off. There's something very liberating about getting out of your comfort zone. And I have found that the more exotic countries, the more that a country is different than your culture, the more there is this weird, funny feeling that you get. Sort of like, how amazing is it that I'm here? It's like another world, another civilization. If you travel to another country that's sort of similar to your country, it's still kind of cool. But going to a place that is very different, you get that culture shock, but you also get that cultural enlightenment and are able to really understand the breadth of how humans do live. And I really felt that in Cairo. I felt that with first of all, it was the first Islamic country that I had ever been to. And I grew up hardcore Christian, and you grow up with ideas of what Muslim people are going to be like, and you meet some Muslims in America, but they're Muslim American, or they're Americanized to a certain extent. And I did meet some Christian Egyptians, but it was very interesting to be in an Islamic country, to be in Africa, to be in Egypt, which has the history. It was so different, so different, and I loved it, and it made me feel so happy. I would say I was much more fulfilled as a solo traveler, which was something that I was lacking in Crete, that lack of confidence and being able to walk around Ramses Square and see the sights, sometimes with the guide, sometimes not with the guide, sometimes just by myself, walking around and meeting random strangers. Because when you travel alone, you meet a lot more people. When you travel as a pair, whether with your lover or with a friend, you always have each other's company, which is great. But although you can bicker and disagree on where to eat, what to do, but you always have each other. And you can meet other people. It's not difficult. But when you travel by yourself, you have the freedom to choose where you want to go. You have the freedom to eat what you want to eat, and you're much more approachable. Strangers are much more likely to approach a solo traveler than they are a couple or a group. And as a solo person, you also feel this innate desire to connect with other humans. So I ended up meeting a lot more people as a solo traveler than when I was traveling with Paul. I started to realize that I didn't need anyone to go with me through life, even. That I could be a solo traveler in life, or at least at this stage of my journey. And that was a very powerful realization. That I didn't need anyone. I need the world. I need people. I need affection and I need experience, but I didn't need to be reliant on another person for my happiness or my direction. And for me, travel is amazing in itself. Sampling the food, seeing the attractions, taking in gorgeous sights, the photography, every aspect of travel is fun. Every aspect of travel is incredible in its own right. But for me, it's these personal self revelations and epiphanies that you acquire because you're putting yourself through these experiences and you're sort of realizing more of who you are and what you're capable of than you could do just going through the humdrum routine of listening to your boss or listening to your wife or what have you. Travel gives you an opportunity to really come out of your shell and become deeper into your potential. So Egypt gave me a lot of that. And meeting Del and Michael, became close friends with them. We ended up traveling to the Sinai Peninsula. We went to the Red Sea, where Moses, if the Bible is correct, where Moses helped the ancient Israelites flee Pharaoh as he parted the Red Sea for them to escape and make their way into Israel. So yeah, that 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston, if you ever watched that movie, I went there, the Red Sea. It's gorgeous, clear water. Saudi Arabia is right on the other side. You can see Saudi Arabia. And I would go snorkeling every day because I would rent a snorkel for like $1 a day. And the swimming was just wonderful. Tons of coral. The fish, the colors of the fish were exotic and just a great diversity of sparkly, shiny scales all around me. Some fish, there was one fish with these spikes out and he had sort of a confidence. He went slow. He was striped. He was gorgeous. And I told my friends, Del and Michael said, I think that's like a lionfish or a dragonfish. It was like a dangerous, poisonous fish. But I remember swimming next to this thing really close. It was so gorgeous. And so clean, so clear that it was so easy to see. Go get shisha. We would smoke shisha. That's that Middle Eastern style water pipe. Sometimes we would go to belly dancing. I remember in Cairo, I went to belly dancing on a ferry. It was like belly dancing was sort of like illegal in the city, but on this ferry that was on the water, you could go and there'd be like Saudis in their big white get-ups in the front row, and there'd be women showing their skin, and people need the basic necessities. They need a little entertainment, they need food, and every culture has their own way of going about it. You can go near where I live and see topless girls, or who knows what. There it's different. It's belly dancing. It's a different type of female entertainment. Not a lot of coffee, but a lot of tea places everywhere. Although, a lot of those tea places, they're very friendly, but they will rip you off. They will charge you a tourist price. There's no menus that say the price at that time, 2003. So what I learned was if I went to the tea shop and ordered a tea, and then I asked for the bill, I would end up paying 5 times the price for a tea. And there was nothing I could do about it because I couldn't say, hey, that's not the price, because there's no menu. And I didn't have a leg to stand on. Whereas if I went into the tea shop and I said, oh yeah, I'd love some tea. How much is it? Then they would tell me the price. And I would say, really? Is it really 5 Egyptian pounds? Are you sure it's not 1 or 2? And so I became a much more savvy negotiator dealing with opportunists trying to get my US dollar. Part of the fun of traveling. You make some mistakes in the beginning, but you definitely learn. I became very savvy at negotiating in marketplaces. Sometimes some of these vendors would get either impressed with me or a little hostile, because when you travel and you end up doing all of these negotiating and knowing that so many people are there to try to rip you off, you do end up kind of having your guard up and realizing that it's a bit of a game to try to get down to what the price should actually be for a lot of things. So yeah, last I guess I hiked up to the top of Mount Sinai. I think I did it with Del and Michael. So hiked up there before sunrise, got there as the sun was just rising, was there with my backpack, had a beautiful view of where Moses got the 10 Commandments, apparently. And I remember talking to a guide. He wasn't my guide. I think my tour with Amigo was finished by then, but he was telling his customers, and I was privy to their conversation, just how proud he was of Egyptian history. A lot of pride. When I was in Greece, a lot of people were very proud of their history. When I was in Egypt, a lot of people were very proud of their history. Although I don't think the people who are in Egypt now I don't think a lot of them are actually Egyptian in the sense that they descend from the ancient Egyptians. From what I understand, most of them descend from Arabs, the conquerors who conquered Egypt. But I don't really know. I don't know if that's proven or just one theory or an idea. It's probably mostly a fact. But they were very proud of their nation's history, even the ancient Egyptian history, whether or not they're actually their descendants. And this guide on the top of Mount Sinai, where Moses got the 10 Commandments, spoke to the God in the burning bush. This guide is so proud of his country, and he's just so wants to express his enthusiasm, and he finishes his juice box, and he just chucks it on this holy mountain. I thought that was insane. Now, for me, in America, littering is, although you do find a lot of litter in certain places, but litter is a big sin in America. It's a big sin in a lot of places, but in Egypt, litter was not a sin. I remember taking the train and just seeing the whole train tracks filled with shit, filled with garbage. It was easy to find garbage. Also, security-wise, I never felt threatened. Only one time I was hiking in an open-air market in a small town, and I was talking to, it was like one of those, like, Aladdin markets. They're selling strange spices, strange shawls, and whatnot. And then this guy says, another guy with a lazy eye. And he looked at me like a predator, and he said, "Yeah, you want the beer? I'll show you the beer. Come." And he started leading me down a dark alley. And then the red flag went up, and I said, "Sorry, sir, I'm not going to follow you any further." And I left. That was the only time I felt afraid. Also, I was a little alarmed when I went to some of these small towns and I saw there were a lot of armed, like, military or police personnel with like assault rifles. In America, our cops are pretty badass. They do carry guns with them. They carry, rifles or shotguns in their car. But it's one thing, and then in some countries, like Japan, they just have like a bow staff. But in Egypt, there were guards posted on every corner with heavy, I don't know if they're AK-47s or something. That was a little weird. I don't feel safe when I see a lot of guns, even if they're in the hands of the people who are trying to protect me. I just don't feel safe when I see that. But when you're in a poor country, a country that might have some turmoil or some unhappy people, then maybe it's a necessary evil. I don't know. Just thought I'd mention it. And so I liked Egypt. I loved it. I would highly recommend anyone to go to Egypt if you would like to. Check the political situation, but know that whatever you read on the news isn't going to be exactly how it will be in the country. Sometimes the news will say this country's dangerous. You go there and it's dangerous in that section of the country, but the other parts are. Or you go to a country that is thought safe, and actually that's where you end up getting mugged. You never know. It's always a gamble. Do your research. Egypt's a great country. The history alone is fantastic. The difference in culture is enlightening. But be prepared for an upset stomach. All right, that's it for this episode. Thank you for watching. My name's Ryan Freeman. Bye.